Hello, fifth grade. We're going to get started today on our math lesson, which is squares and square root. Okay, so this goes in line with area. Okay, this is on page 265 through 266, so go ahead and open up your math books. Okay, so if you were to take a look at the yellow box on your page, you would start to see a few different things. And I want to go through a few steps with you just to remind you of what area is so that we can get through squares and square root. Okay, so we know that a square, right? If we wanted to find out area of a square, we knew that, say this was 5 inches, right? Then we would know all of the sides are 5 inches because it's a square. So we know that area equals S times S because it's side times side. We do not use A equals length times width because that's for a rectangle. And the reason why we don't do length times width is because we use side because a square has 4 sides that are all the same, right? Okay. So if you were to look at this, you would know that side times side is your answer. A equals 5 times 5, which is A equals 25 inches, right? We now found the area of our square, okay? Now, when we are trying to find the area of a square, we can also use something that has a base number and an exponent in it, okay? What that means is that, let's go ahead and look at this one. If we know that 5 is the side, we could say A equals, come over here, 5 squared, okay? What that means is this little part right here is called the exponent, and this is called the base number, okay? What that means is that you're saying 5 times itself because 2 means you're multiplying the base by itself twice, okay? So this is called 5 squared because up here, A equals side plus side, right? So this would be A equals 5 times 5, which means A equals 25, okay? We did the same thing up here. Difference is we use this equation of 5 squared because it's by the 2 power. The exponent is what we call in the second power, okay? Meaning we multiply 2, okay? The same, but we ended up with the same thing down here as we did up here, right? But just a little bit different, okay? Because we use the exponent factor. How are we feeling about that? Let me show you again, okay? So if I have a square, right, that is 3 inches, right, then I would know A equals 3 times 3, right? Area equals 9. Pretty simple, right? 9 inches, okay? Because I used A equals S times S, okay? Now, if I wanted to use area by using the exponent factor, I could say A equals side squared, okay? And what is my side? 3. A equals 3 squared. What does that mean? A equals 3 times 3. Oh, look, now we're back up to the same exact situation we were up here. And we have A equals 9. And our unit measurement of inches. I got the same answer by doing it either way, okay? So now the opposite of trying to find out the area is called, the opposite is called square root. Now, this is where you see this funky little almost division type looking thing, okay? Now, that symbol looks like this, and that's called the square root symbol, okay? Now, what that means is that it's there to show you that a square root can be found meaning that if you do it the backwards way that we just did up on the board, you will end up coming out with the same answer. So let me show you, okay? Or you're doing it backwards. So if I were to look at this, okay, but I'm trying to find out the area of the square, right? I would take, but I've already been given that. So say I've been given the square root of 25. Now what that means is I have to figure out how to get the side length based on this, okay? Now what that means is I have to look and say, what number times itself equals 25? Okay, are you getting that? So if you take a look, we know that 5 times 5 equals 25, right? That means that my answer would be 5, okay? Now I can also go the opposite way and say, could I say 5 squared? And that would mean 5 times 5, right? And what would that equal? That would equal 25. Do you see where I got 25? So I just went backwards again, okay? This is called the square root. All you're doing is asking, does this number, or being that you know there's a square root bar there, that yes it does this number have a number that when multiplied by itself, it equals that number? And it does, right? 5 times 5 equals 25. Okay, so if we were to do that again, let's take a look at if I have the square root of 144. Wow, that's pretty big, right? 144. Now here we go. Think about it. Which number's not good in multiplication on? And you're already going to know your answer if you've paid attention to me enough, okay? Well, look at what number times itself equals 144. This is obviously where your multiplication facts come in. But yes, 12, right? Because this is like saying 12 times 12 equals 144, right? Or 12 squared equals 144, which we know those two mean the exact same thing because 12 squared, meaning the exponent is a 2, it equals, that would be 12 times 12, which would equal 144, okay? So the answer to the square root of 144 would be 12, because 12 times 12 equals 144. See how this is all working out? Okay, so let's take a look at our problems for the day. Okay, turn to the top of 265, and we're going to do number 1. It says solve the story problems. Okay, Missy Johnson planted a square flower garden. Okay, so we have our square, right? Okay, and each side is 8 yards. Okay, what is the area of the garden? Okay, what is the area? I can use 2 different equations. What are my equations? A equals side times side, or A equals side squared, right? What is my side? My side is 8, so I could fill this in. I'm going to move this one down. I could fill this in, and I could say 8 equals 8 times 8. 8 equals 64 yards. That would be one way to do it. Or I can use the exponent factor and say A equals S squared. A equals 8 squared. And A equals 8 times 8, which is 8 equals 64 yards. I got the same answer. Now, does it look like I did a couple more steps doing it this way? It does a little bit, but when you really get thinking about it, you actually can do it quicker, right? I'm working it out on the board for you just because I want you to see, okay? So now let's go to B. Okay, what does B say? Okay, B says, Mr. Taylor's classroom. Oh, I just messed something up. I don't know if you guys caught that, but when I did A equals S times S, and then I did A equals 8 times 8, and then I did A equals 64. Because we were doing area, oh my gosh, I forgot, square yards. Don't forget the square yards. Do not do what Mrs. Lawler did, and do not forget the square yards, okay? If you caught me on that one, I wish you could have reached your hand through the computer and shook me and reminded me, but I'm glad I caught it right before the end. Okay, so square yards. Remember, when we are doing area of a square, we end up with square yards, okay? Okay, so now let's go over to Mr. Taylor's classroom. This is 1B. Mr. Taylor's classroom is in the shape of a square. Oh, there we go. And the area, okay, area is 81 square yards, okay? 81 square yards, okay. How many yards is each side? So this is where we would say, I need to find the side. So the side would equal the square root of 81. Okay? So what is the square root of 81? S equals, right? 9, right? So 9 times 9, right, would equal 81. So I know, so 9 times 9 equals 81, right? So I know that the side is 9. 9 what? 9 yards. Now remember, when I go back to the side, that's when I just have the yards, but when I go to the area, I have the square yards, okay? So let's take a look at a couple of the other problems, okay? So got that one down? Okay. So here's a couple of the other problems. It says, for number 2, you're going to write the products. Remember to multiply the base by itself and not by the number 2. Okay, that is one thing that when people see this, okay, and they see A equals 8 to the second power, meaning squared, they want to go 8 times 2 is 16. Don't do that, okay, because it's not accurate, right? We know that this means you're multiplying the base number by itself, meaning 2 times. 8 times 8, okay? I'm going to jump ahead really quick, and I'm going to tell you that one day, not in our class, but one day you're going to see to the 3rd power. You're going to see to the 4th power, the 6th power, 7th power. What does that mean? That means that then you multiply 8 times 8 times 8 times 8. Okay, don't multiply 8 times 3 because that is not the same answer as 8 times 8 times 8 times 8, right? The 3 times, right? Okay, so that's the same thing when you have 8 squared. You want to make sure that you are not multiplying it by 2. You're multiplying it by itself, okay? So now if you take a look at 1A, you have 1 squared. Now, 1 times 1 is 1, right? So our answer would be 1, okay? What about 2B? 2 squared. 2 times 2 is, now yes, that throws you because there's a 2 there, but don't let it throw you. Remember, it's the base number times itself, okay? And this base number is 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, right? 4 is your answer. What about 3 times to the 3 squared? Then it would be 3 times 3 is 9. You got it? See how this is working? Okay. Go ahead and you're going to complete number 2 on your own. But before we do that, I want to jump over and I want to remember that on 3A, we're doing the square root of 1. Okay? So if I do the square root of 1, 1 times 1 is 1. So my answer would be 1, right? Now, what about the square root of 4? What times itself equals 4? 2 times 2, right? So my answer would be 2. Do we see how we're going with this? Okay. What if I did the next one? My square root of 9. What times 9, or what times itself equals 9? 3 times 3. My answer would be 3. Do you see how this is all going? Awesome. Okay. I am going to run out of time, so please make sure that you complete all of these problems. And I'm also going to do a quick review for a couple of the next ones, so watch the second video.